Before we begin the story, let us know where you're watching from by leaving a comment below. If you enjoy this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. Have a wonderful day. Enjoy the story, everyone. The autumn afternoon in Chicago carried that kind of golden light that turns everything into memory. Rays of sunlight streamed through the white linen curtains of Claire's apartment, drawing warm stripes across the polished oak floor. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee mixed with the gentle scent of lavender she sprayed every morning. A ritual that kept her grounded, present, alive. Claire sat on the gray velvet couch, phone wedged between her shoulder and ear, fingers absent-mindedly, playing with the hem of her cotton blouse. On the other line, her friend Megan chatted about plans for the weekend dinner, maybe a movie, perhaps even a getaway to the lake. "Sorry, Meg, I can't this weekend." The words came out wrapped in something Claire couldn't name. It wasn't exactly sadness. Maybe it was anticipation or fear, or that dangerous mix of both that makes your heart beat out of rhythm. "Why?" "You never say no." Megan's voice was curious, concerned. "What happened?" Claire closed her eyes. The silence on the line throbbed like an open wound. "Nathan's coming today." His name escaped her lips like a secret confessed in the shadows of an empty church. Nathan. 3 syllables that still had the power to make her hands tremble and her breathing turn shallow. "Wait, Nathan? Your ex-husband Nathan? That Nathan?" "Yes. He's coming to visit Leo." Megan's voice softened, almost maternal. "Claire, are you sure you're ready for this?" Was she? Of course not. Nearly a year had passed since the separation, a year of sleepless nights, of empty cribs, filled only with the crying of a baby who didn't know his father, of unanswered questions that ate away at her from the inside. A year since she discovered or thought she discovered the betrayal. Nathan and Vanessa, her friend Vanessa. The photos, the messages, the lie that settled between them like an insurmountable wall. "I need to do this for Leo," Claire answered, though even she didn't fully believe her own words. "He deserves to know his father." But there was another truth, raw and pulsing, that Claire couldn't admit even to herself. A part of her, that wild and inconvenient part that lives deep in your chest, wanted to see Nathan again, wanted to look into his eyes and search for answers, or maybe for something that should never have been lost. After hanging up, Claire stood in the middle of the room, hugging herself. The apartment felt too small, the air too heavy. She could hear the tick-tock of the clock on the kitchen wall. Each second was a countdown to the inevitable. Leo played on the plush rug near the window, stacking colorful blocks with that pure concentration only 2-year-olds possess. His brown curls, so much like Nathan's, gleamed under the golden light. The boy had no memory of his father. To him, Nathan was just a face in photographs, an absent presence that Claire tried to explain with words too simple for the complexity of the truth. "Mommy, look." Leo pointed at his wobbling tower of blocks, his brown eyes shining with pride. "Beautiful, sweetheart. You're so clever." Claire knelt beside him, kissing the top of his head. The smell of children's shampoo and cookies enveloped her, that scent, that was pure innocence, pure hope. How would she explain to this little being that the man about to arrive was his father? How would she reconcile the image of Nathan as a cheater with Leo's need to have a present father? The truth was, Claire didn't know if she could forgive, but she also didn't know if she could keep hating. She walked to the kitchen, her hands seeking occupation. She started making cookies, an old recipe from her grandmother, one she always made when she needed to calm her mind. Flour covered her fingers. Sugar scattered across the cold marble counter. The rhythmic sound of the spoon beating against the bowl was almost meditative. But then, in the middle of a stroke, an image flashed through her mind: Nathan on their wedding morning, his eyes fixed on her as she walked down the church aisle, the way he had held her face with both hands and whispered, "You're everything I've ever wanted." The way their bodies fit together perfectly at night, skin against skin, breaths synchronized as if they'd been sculpted for each other. Claire shook her head, trying to push the memories away, but they were persistent, stubborn, alive. The clock read 3:40. Nathan said he'd arrive at 4. Claire looked at herself, the white cotton blouse slightly stained with flour, the faded jeans, her hair pulled into a messy bun. For a brief moment, she considered changing, but then she decided against it. She wasn't trying to impress him. This wasn't about them. It was about Leo. At least, that's what she tried to convince herself. The afternoon light continued to dance through the room, creating long melancholy shadows. The apartment was quiet, except for the occasional sounds of Leo playing and the distant murmur of Chicago traffic outside, that constant hum of a city that never stops, that never waits for anyone. Claire returned to the living room and sat on the couch, her hands still trembling slightly. She looked at the door, that door that in a few minutes would open to let in the past, a past she had tried to bury under layers of anger, hurt, and determination to move forward. But the past, she was beginning to realize, never truly stays buried. It just waits for the right moment to resurface, to demand attention, to force confrontations that have been put off for too long. And then, breaking through the heavy silence, the doorbell rang. The sound echoed through the apartment like thunder announcing a storm. Claire froze. Her heart raced, pounding against her ribs like a bird trapped in a cage. Leo dropped his blocks and ran toward the door, laughing with that unconscious joy of children who don't yet know the weight of adult complications. Claire rose slowly, as if emerging from deep water. Her feet felt like lead. Each step toward the door was a choice to keep hating or to allow the possibility of something different. When she finally reached the door and gripped the cold handle, she took a deep breath. On the other side, Nathan waited, and with him all the questions she had avoided asking, all the truth she was afraid to hear, and all the possibilities she never dared imagine. The door opened, and there he was. Nathan stood in the doorway like a sculpture of contradictions, imposing, yet hesitant, present, yet distant. Time hadn't been cruel to him. If anything, it had refined his features, the broad shoulders that filled out his brown leather jacket, the jawline marked by 3 days' worth of stubble, the dark brown eyes that once devoured her with an intensity that left her breathless. Those same eyes now searched for her over Leo's head, carrying a weight she recognized, immediately longing, mixed with regret. Desire contained by a thin wall of restraint. "Hi, Claire." His voice was exactly as she remembered, deep, warm, with that timbre that used to make her skin tingle. 2 simple words, but loaded with an entire year of silence, of conversations never had, of explanations that never came. "Nathan," she managed, his name coming out like an involuntary sigh. Leo, oblivious to the electric tension crossing the space between the two adults, grabbed onto Nathan's leg with childish enthusiasm. "Daddy, Daddy." Nathan's face transformed. The hardness he'd been holding in his shoulders melted instantly. He knelt down to the boy's level and opened his arms. Leo threw himself against his father's chest, and Nathan wrapped him in an embrace that seemed to want to make up for all the months of absence in a single moment. "Hey, champ. You've grown so much." His voice failed, choked with emotion. Claire watched the scene with her heart torn in 2 opposite directions. Part of her, the maternal, protective part, was happy to see her son finally in his father's arms. But the other part, the betrayed, wounded woman, felt a pang of resentment so sharp it almost made her step back. Nathan lifted Leo easily, and the boy laughed out loud, that pure, crystalline laugh that sounded like bells in the wind. When Nathan finally entered the apartment, his scent came with him, a mixture of leather, wood, and something indefinable that was just him. Claire had to hold her breath for a moment. Scent memories are the most powerful, and that aroma immediately transported her to nights, intertwined, lazy mornings, promises whispered in the dark. "Come in," she said, stepping back to give him space, creating physical distance as a defense mechanism. Nathan crossed the threshold, his eyes examining the apartment, the couch where they used to watch movies, the window where they made plans for the future, the kitchen where he'd kiss her while she made breakfast. Everything was the same, but different, as if the apartment were a museum of a life that no longer existed. "Are you okay?" he asked, his eyes finally landing on her with an intensity that made her look away. "I'm surviving," Claire replied, her voice colder than she intended. "Coffee? Please." She walked to the kitchen, grateful for the excuse to move away. Her hands trembled slightly as she prepared the coffee maker. She could hear Nathan talking to Leo in the living room, his voice soft and patient as the boy showed him his toys. The sound of that interaction, father and son, created a dull ache in Claire's chest. This was what should have been. This was the life she'd imagined when she said, "I do" at the altar. "He looks a lot like me," Nathan said, appearing in the kitchen doorway. Leo had returned to his blocks, leaving the adults in uncomfortable proximity. "Yes, he has your eyes. Your smile, too," Claire admitted, keeping her back turned as she stirred the coffee longer than necessary. "And his temperament, who does he take after?" "Leo is Leo. Unique." A heavy silence descended between them, filled only by the sound of coffee dripping into the pot. Nathan moved closer, standing beside her at the counter. Claire could feel the warmth of his body, even without touching him, a magnetic presence that had always had the power to dismantle her defenses. "Claire," he began, his voice low, intimate, "I know you don't want to talk to me. I know I deserve your hatred. but I need you to know that I never stopped thinking about you. About us." She closed her eyes, her hands gripping the edge of the cold marble counter. "Don't do this, Nathan. You don't have the right to come here, and I know I don't have any rights. But I have truths you never let me tell." Claire turned abruptly to face him, her eyes burning with unshed tears. "Truths? You want to talk about truths? Like the truth of you in Vanessa's arms? The messages, the photos she sent me, those truths?" Nathan's face contorted in genuine pain. He took a step back, his hands rising in a gesture of surrender. "That was a setup. Vanessa has been obsessed with me since college. She manipulated everything, drugged my drink at that party, staged the photos. I was unconscious, Claire. When I woke up, she was taking selfies with me. I tried to explain to you, but you'd already made up your mind." "Made up my mind? You think that was easy for me? I was pregnant, Nathan. Pregnant and alone while you. I never cheated on you." His voice exploded, hoarse with desperation. "Never. You were the only woman I loved, the only one I ever wanted." Claire felt her legs weaken. She wanted to believe. God, how she wanted to believe. But the pain was still fresh, throbbing like an open wound. "Why should I believe you now?" "Because Vanessa confessed. She came to me 3 months ago, tormented by guilt. I recorded her confession. I have proof, Claire. I can show you." Claire's world tilted on its axis. She gripped the counter to keep from falling. "You have proof?" "Yes, but I didn't come here to force you to forgive me. I came because our son deserves to have a father, and because I can't give up on us." Nathan took a step forward, his eyes penetrating hers with raw vulnerability. He extended his hand slowly, his fingers lightly touching her arm. The touch was electric, sending waves of heat through her body. "I love you, Claire. I never stopped. Not for a second." She looked at his hand on her arm, then at his face. That face she knew so well, she'd memorized in every detail. She saw sincerity there. She saw pain. She saw love. But she also saw the reflection of her own vulnerability, and that scared her. "I need time," she whispered, gently pulling away. Nathan nodded, letting his hand fall to his side. "I understand. I won't pressure you. Just don't shut me out of Leo's life. Please, I would never do that. You're his father." Nathan smiled, a sad smile, loaded with fragile hope. "Thank you." They returned to the living room where Leo waited with a storybook. Nathan sat on the floor, pulling the boy into his lap, and began to read in that engaging voice that had always had the gift of creating entire worlds with words. Claire watched them from the couch, her heart divided between what was, what could have been, and what still might be. Nathan looked at her between pages, and each look was a silent question, an invitation, an unspoken promise. The golden afternoon was beginning to darken, transforming into twilight. Shadows lengthened across the room, creating an intimate, almost conspiratorial atmosphere. And there, in that apartment full of memories and possibilities, something began to change. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a door left ajar, a crack in the wall Claire had built around her heart. And through that crack, dangerous light was beginning to enter. Night fell over Chicago like a dark velvet veil, and with it, a dangerous intimacy settled into the apartment. Corner lamps cast a soft amber light, creating dancing shadows on the walls. The apartment had that peculiar silence of autumn nights, the world outside muffled by closed windows, leaving only the sound of breathing, soft footsteps, and unspoken words floating in the air. Nathan was on the living room floor, putting together a puzzle with Leo. His large, calloused hands manipulated the colorful pieces with surprising delicacy, fitting together elephants and giraffes, while the boy clapped at each success. The scene was so domestic, so perfectly normal, that it hurt. Claire watched from the couch, her legs tucked under her body, a cup of tea cooling between her hands. But it wasn't the puzzle that held her attention. It was Nathan, the way he tilted his head when Leo spoke, giving the boy his full attention, the way his lips curved into a genuine smile each time the little one got a piece right. The strong hands that now held toys, but that she remembered holding her face, tracing the curve of her waist, exploring every inch of her skin with a reverence that made her feel like living art. Nathan looked up, met her eyes. Time froze. It wasn't a casual glance. It was recognition, the kind that cuts through all layers of pretense and defense and reaches straight to the naked truth of desire. His eyes darkened, pupils dilating slightly. He didn't look away, neither did she. Claire felt heat rising up her neck, coloring her cheeks. Her heart accelerated, beating a primitive rhythm her body knew well, the rhythm of wanting, of remembering, of yearning for something that should be dead, but that insisted on remaining alive, pulsing, impossible to ignore. She was the first to look away, returning her eyes to the teacup, feigning sudden interest in the leaves floating on the surface. "Mommy, look, I finished," Leo shouted, breaking the tension like a stone breaking glass. Claire forced a smile and stood up. Walking over to them, she knelt beside the completed puzzle, an African savanna, full of colorful animals. "Beautiful, sweetheart. You and Daddy make a great team." The words came out before she could filter them. Daddy, team, words that suggested unity, partnership, family. She felt Nathan move beside her, the heat of his body radiating like a dangerously close sun. "He's incredible," Nathan said quietly, just for her to hear, just like his mother. Claire didn't respond. She didn't trust her own voice. She stood up quickly, creating distance. "I'll make dinner. You two must be hungry." In the kitchen, she leaned her hands on the counter, breathing deeply. The aroma of garlic and tomato began to fill the space as she prepared a simple pasta, something comforting, familiar. Cooking had always been her form of meditation, of bringing order to internal chaos. But then she felt him. Nathan was in the kitchen doorway, leaning against the frame, arms crossed over his chest, just watching. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. His presence was a statement in itself. "Do you need something?" Claire asked without turning around, chopping onions with more force than necessary. "Just watching you," he replied with disarming simplicity. "Why?" "Because I forgot how beautiful you are when you're focused. The way you bite your lower lip when you're thinking. The way your hair falls over your shoulder when you lean forward." Claire stopped chopping. The knife hung suspended in the air. "Nathan, don't watch. Don't notice. Don't remember. Claire, I spent nearly a year trying to forget you. Trying to erase every detail, every memory. It didn't work." She finally turned around, her face a mask of contradictory emotions. "And you think it's easy for me seeing you here in our apartment, playing with our son as if nothing happened? I'm not pretending nothing happened. I know exactly what happened, and I know what I lost." He took a step into the kitchen, then another. The distance between them shrank with each movement, and Claire felt the air getting thinner, more charged. "You're wearing that perfume," he said, his voice husky. "Vanilla and jasmine. Always was my favorite." "I'm not wearing it for you," she replied defensively, but they both knew it was a lie. Nathan smiled a small, knowing smile. "I know, but still, it makes me remember." "Remember what?" "Everything. Mornings waking up with you in my arms. Nights when I'd come home from work and you'd run to hug me. That weekend in Wisconsin when we got snowed in at the cabin and made love in front of the fireplace for hours." Each word was a caress, a provocation, a physical memory that activated nerve endings. Claire thought she'd turned off. "Stop," she whispered, but without conviction. "Why? Because the truth hurts? Because you remember too? Because you still feel it? Because it doesn't help? Because remembering only makes everything harder?" Her voice broke at the end, and tears began rolling down her face. Nathan closed the remaining distance in 2 long strides. His hands came up to her face, thumbs wiping away the tears with a tenderness that completely undid her. "Claire, I never wanted to hurt you. Never. That was the worst day of my life, watching you pull away from me, watching trust die in your eyes. I would die 1,000 times before choosing to do that to you." She looked at him through her tears, saw the truth there, raw and painful, saw the same suffering she carried mirrored in his eyes. "I wanted so badly to hate you," she confessed. "It would be so much easier to hate you." "And can you hate me?" Claire closed her eyes, his hands still framing her face. "And that scares me more than anything." The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was dense, loaded with everything they couldn't say, everything they still felt, everything that remained alive between them despite time, despite pain, despite all the reasons to let it die. "Mommy, Daddy, come see." Leo's voice echoed from the living room, breaking the moment. Nathan let his hands fall slowly, fingers sliding down her jaw in one last caress before pulling away. "We should go," he said softly. Claire nodded, wiping her face with the back of her hand. They returned to the living room where Leo had stacked all his books into an unstable tower. "Look at my giant tower," the boy shouted proudly. They laughed, a genuine sound that relieved some of the tension. They sat on the floor beside Leo, Nathan on one side, Claire on the other, the boy between them. For a moment, they looked like a family, a broken family maybe, but still a family. When Leo started yawning, Claire took him for a bath. Nathan stayed in the living room, but he could hear her humming a lullaby, the soft sound floating down the hallway. It was the same song she sang when they were together, when the world still made sense. He closed his eyes, letting the music wash over him like a wave of nostalgia. When Claire returned, Leah was in her arms, already drowsy. "Want to say goodnight to Daddy?" she whispered. Nathan approached, kissing the boy's forehead. "Good night, champ. Daddy loves you so much." "Love you, Daddy," Leo murmured, already half asleep. Claire took the boy to his room. Nathan stood there alone in the living room, surrounded by remnants of a life that was his, but also wasn't anymore, not completely. When she came back, there was a new determination in her eyes. "I'm going to take a shower," she announced, her voice carefully neutral. "You can stay a little longer if you want. Just don't leave without saying goodbye." There was something in those words. A permission, perhaps. Or a test. Nathan wasn't sure. "I won't," he promised. Claire nodded and disappeared down the hallway. Moments later, the sound of water began a steady flow that echoed through the apartment's stillness, and Nathan stood there in the middle of the living room, torn between what he should do and what his entire body begged him to do. The hallway seemed a million miles long and, at the same time, dangerously short. The sound of the shower was like a call constant, rhythmic, impossible to ignore. Nathan stood in the middle of the living room for a time he couldn't measure, eyes fixed on the dark hallway leading to the bathroom. The amber light escaping from under the door was like a beacon guiding him towards something he knew was dangerous but couldn't resist. He took a step, then another. His feet seemed to have a will of their own, moving without conscious permission. His heartbeat thundered against his ribs, each beat echoing in his ears like a war drum. The hallway narrowed around him, or maybe it was just his perception closing in on a single focal point. That half-open door, the bathroom door, not completely closed, not completely open, just inviting. Nathan stopped a few steps from the door. Golden light spilled through the narrow gap, and with it, hot steam carrying the unmistakable aroma of vanilla and jasmine, her perfume now mixed with the steam from hot water. The smell was intoxicating, wrapping around him like invisible fingers pulling him closer. He closed his eyes, trying to gather the strength to walk away. He should go back to the living room. He should wait politely. He should respect her space. Respect the boundaries that the separation had established. But then he heard her a low sigh, almost inaudible, but loaded with something he recognized immediately. It wasn't just the sigh of someone taking a shower. It was the sigh of someone letting go of the weight of the day, letting down their guard, allowing themselves to be vulnerable. Nathan opened his eyes, and before he could question it, before reason could intervene, he found himself at the door, his gaze searching through the narrow gap, and then he saw her. Claire was under the shower, her back to the door. Water cascaded over her, tracing shimmering rivers across her skin. Her wet hair, dark as wet ebony, clung to her back, flowing down to the subtle curve of her waist. Her hands were raised, massaging shampoo into her hair, and the movement made her shoulders roll in a hypnotic way, an unconscious dance of muscle, skin, and water. The steam created an ethereal mist around her, as if she were wrapped in clouds. Water droplets gleamed under the bathroom's soft light, transforming her into something not just human, but divine, a goddess of porcelain and water, desire made manifest in physical form. Nathan held his breath. Every cell in his body was awake, vibrating with an intensity that left him dizzy. His heart beat so hard he was certain she could hear it, even over the sound of the shower. His hands hanging at his sides trembled slightly, not from fear, but from restraint. Every fiber of his being screamed to go in, to touch, to close the distance separating them. He remembered that body. He knew every curve, every mark, every secret place that made her sigh. He remembered how she fit perfectly against him, as if they'd been sculpted for each other. He remembered the taste of her skin, the sound she made when he kissed her just below her ear, the way her back arched when he traced a line of kisses down her spine. Claire turned under the water stream, tilting her head back to rinse her hair. The movement made her body arch, arms raised above her head, exposing the graceful line of her neck, the curve of her breasts, the gentle undulation of her abdomen, and then, as if sensing a presence, she opened her eyes, turned slightly, and saw him. Nathan was there in the doorway, partially hidden by shadow, but unmistakably present. Their eyes met through the steam and the fogged glass of the shower door. For 1 second, maybe 2. Neither of them moved. Claire didn't scream, didn't cover herself, didn't ask him to leave. She just looked at him, and in that look, Nathan saw everything: surprise, yes, but also recognition. And beneath those layers, something more primitive, more honest: desire. She wanted him there as much as he wanted to be there. Nathan's eyes were dark, pupils dilated until they'd almost swallowed all the brown. His breathing was visible, deep, controlled, as if he were fighting against something much larger than himself. His jaw was tense, clenched. His hands, once relaxed, were now closed in fists at his sides. He was like that. Claire could see through his clothes, could feel the energy emanating from his body, even from a distance. She knew that look, she knew that posture, she knew what it meant when Nathan looked at her like that, with hunger, with need, with a desire so intense it was almost tangible. The water kept falling, but Claire barely felt it. She was hyper-aware of everything. The hot steam against her skin, the sudden cold of the air where the water didn't reach, the way her own body reacted to his gaze. She felt her nipples harden, not from cold, but from the pure awareness of being watched, desired. She should be furious, should scream, tell him to leave, reinforce the boundaries that should exist between them, but she did none of that. Instead, she held his gaze, a silent challenge, a mute question. "What are you going to do now?" Nathan took a step into the bathroom. The movement was slow, deliberate, giving her time to protest, to pull back, to say no. She said nothing. Another step. The steam enveloped him, making his silhouette slightly blurred, as if he were emerging from a dream or diving into one. "Claire." His voice was hoarse, broken by emotion and desire. I couldn't not look." It wasn't an apology. It was a confession. Claire swallowed hard, her heart beating so strongly she could feel the pulses in her neck, in her wrists, in her belly. "I know," she whispered, barely audible over the sound of the water. Nathan stopped in front of the fogged glass door. Only a thin barrier separated them now, glass that prevented nothing, only delayed the inevitable. He slowly raised his hand, fingers touching the glass exactly where her face was on the other side. The touch was gentle, reverent, as if he were touching something sacred. Claire mirrored the gesture, placing her hand on the glass exactly where his was, palm against palm, separated only by millimeters, and a decision. "Do you remember me?" he asked, his voice a loaded whisper. "Or is this just longing?" The question was loaded. It wasn't just about physical memory, but emotional. It was about whether what they felt was still real, or just the ghost of what was. Claire closed her eyes, breathing deeply. When she opened them again, there was a clarity there, a decision. "I remember," she said, her voice firm despite the trembling she felt inside. "I remember everything." And then, with a movement that seemed simultaneously impulsive and inevitable, she opened the shower door. Steam escaped in a dense cloud, enveloping them both. The water kept falling, creating a constant background sound, like a heartbeat, like the breathing of something alive. Nathan was fully dressed, dark jeans, gray shirt, still wearing his leather jacket. The clothes began to get damp from the steam sticking to his body. But he didn't care. He was mesmerized, unable to take his eyes off her. Claire was naked, vulnerable, exposed. Water ran down her body in shimmering rivers. But her eyes, oh, her eyes showed no shame or hesitation. They showed defiance. They showed desire. "Are you just going to stand there?" she asked, her voice soft but provocative. "Or are you going to do something about it?" It was all Nathan needed to hear. He stepped into the shower, water immediately soaking his clothes. He didn't care. His hands came up to her face, calloused against soft, warm against wet. His thumbs traced the line of her jaw, moving up to her cheekbones, memorizing every contour as if it were the first and last time. "Are you sure?" he asked, giving her one last chance to pull back. Claire placed her hands on his chest, feeling his heart beating hard under the wet shirt. "I'm not sure about anything," she admitted with raw honesty, except that I need this. I need you now." It was all the permission Nathan needed. He pulled her to him, and their lips met under the water stream, a kiss that wasn't soft or gentle, but hungry, desperate, as if they were trying to make up for an entire year of separation in a single moment. And as the water kept falling, washing away the past, the present, and all the reasons why this shouldn't be happening, Nathan and Claire drowned in each other, not in sadness, but in need, in desire, in something that never really died. It just waited. The kiss was everything: hunger and forgiveness, anger and desire, past and present colliding in an explosion of sensations. Nathan's hands were everywhere at once, in her wet hair, on her arched back, on the curve of her waist, as if he were trying to make sure she was real, that this moment wasn't just another of the torturous dreams that haunted him every night. Water cascaded over them, hot and relentless, completely soaking Nathan's clothes. The gray shirt clung to his chest, defining every muscle, every line. Claire could feel the stiffness of the wet fabric against her bare skin, an irritating barrier that needed to disappear. Her fingers moved down his chest, finding the first button of his shirt. She opened it with an urgency that surprised them both. Then the second, the third. Each undone button was a layer of defense being removed, a barrier being demolished. "Claire." Nathan groaned against her lips, his voice thick with need. She didn't respond with words. Instead, she pushed the wet shirt off his shoulders. The fabric clung stubbornly before finally giving way, falling to the shower floor with a heavy, wet sound. Nathan's torso was exposed now, defined muscles, tanned skin, some scars she didn't remember, a new one on his left shoulder, another near his ribs, marks of a year lived without her, of untold stories, of unshared pain. Claire traced the shoulder scar with her fingers, the silent question in her eyes. "Motorcycle accident," Nathan explained briefly, his breathing ragged. 6 months ago. It wasn't serious. But it was serious to her because she wasn't there, because she didn't know, because that year of separation had created gaps in their lives, lost moments that could never be recovered. "You could have died," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I kind of did die," he replied with brutal honesty. "The day you left, a part of me died. The accident was just physical." The words hit her like a punch to the chest. Claire closed her eyes, resting her forehead on his chest. She could feel his heart beating hard against her cheek, living proof that he was there, real, present. Nathan wrapped his arms around her, holding her as if afraid she would disappear. For a long moment, they just stayed like that, bodies entwined under the water, two castaways clinging to each other in the middle of the storm. "Did you remember me?" Claire asked against his chest, echoing the question he'd asked moments before. Or was it convenient to forget? Nathan pulled back just enough to look into her eyes, one hand coming up to brush a wet strand from her face. "I remember every second, every touch, every word, every promise." He paused, his jaw tensing. "And Vanessa." The name fell between them like a stone in still water, creating ripples of tension. Claire stiffened, trying to pull away, but Nathan held her firmly. "Did she use this soap too?" The question came out sharp, an open wound bleeding again. Nathan's face contorted in genuine pain. He held her face with both hands, forcing her to look at him. "I never touched her the way you think. Never. That was staged, Claire. She drugged my drink at that company party. I was unconscious. When I woke up, she was taking pictures with me, staging it. I could barely stand. Then why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you fight for us? I tried. You wouldn't listen to me. And I was a coward. I should have yelled. I should have begged. I should have made you listen. But you were pregnant and so hurt. And I thought maybe you'd be better off without me. That you deserved something better. It wasn't your decision to make." Her voice rose, loaded with accumulated anger and pain. "You had no right to decide what was best for me. I know, and I regret it every day. Every single day." Tears began rolling down Claire's face, mixing with the shower water. Nathan wiped them away with his thumbs, his own eyes glistening. "I would never have hurt you that way," he whispered, his voice breaking. "You're everything to me. You always have been. From the first day I saw you in the university cafeteria, laughing with that group of friends, the sun making your hair shine like gold. I knew in that moment you'd be the woman I'd love for the rest of my life." Claire sobbed, her chest tight with emotion. "How can I believe? How can I trust again?" "Look at me," Nathan asked gently. When she didn't, he lifted her chin, forcing eye contact. "Look in my eyes and tell me you don't see the truth there. Tell me you don't feel it." She looked, and she saw love. She saw regret. She saw pain. She saw a man completely shattered, but still standing, still fighting, still hoping. "I see it," she admitted in a broken whisper, "but I'm so afraid." "Me too. I'm terrified. Terrified of losing you again. Terrified of messing everything up again. But even more terrified of not trying, of letting fear win and losing you forever." Nathan moved closer, his face inches from hers, breaths intertwined, gazes submerged in each other. The pain of the past was beginning to melt under the heat of the present. "Give me a chance," he begged. "Just one. To prove I'm not the man you think I am. To show that the love I feel for you never died, that it never will. Claire closed her eyes, her heart at war with itself. All logic screamed to pull back, to protect herself, to not make the same mistake twice. But the heart had its own language, its own truth. And in that moment, under the hot water, wrapped in the arms of the man she loved and hated in equal measure, Claire made a choice. She kissed him. It wasn't a hesitant or questioning kiss. It was surrender, a declaration, a yes whispered against his lips. Nathan groaned low in his throat, a primitive masculine sound that reverberated through her body. His arms wrapped around her completely, pulling her so close there wasn't room to breathe between them. The kiss deepened, tongues dancing, exploring, rediscovering. Claire's hands slid to Nathan's nape, fingers threading through his wet hair, pulling slightly. He responded with a low growl, his hands sliding down her back to grab her hips, pressing her against the cold tile wall. The contrast between the cold on her back and the heat of his body in front was electrifying. Claire arched against him, a moan escaping her lips. "God, I missed you," Nathan murmured against her neck, his mouth tracing a trail of hot kisses along her jawline down to the curve of her neck. Every curve, every sound, every part of you. His hands explored with reverence, sliding over her waist, up her ribs, caressing with a gentleness that contrasted with the urgency of the kiss. When his fingers finally reached her breasts, Claire sighed, her head falling back against the tiles. Nathan. His name was a prayer, a plea, a promise. He captured a nipple between his lips, his tongue circling, teasing, while his hand massaged the other breast. Claire buried her fingers in his hair, holding him there. Lost in sensations, she was sure she'd never feel again. Her hands moved down his wet torso, tracing the defined muscles of his abdomen, moving down until they found the belt of his soaked jeans. Her fingers worked the buckle with growing urgency. Nathan helped, undoing the button and zipper with trembling hands. The wet pants clung stubbornly to his legs, but finally gave way, kicked to the corner of the shower. Now they were skin against skin, nothing between them except water, steam, and years of repressed desire. Nathan lifted her easily, his hands holding her thighs as she wrapped her legs around his waist. Her back was against the cold wall, his chest pressed against hers, and between them a tension so intense the air seemed to vibrate. "Can you still take my breath away?" he murmured in her ear, his voice rough as sin and promise. Claire held his face with both hands, forcing him to look into her eyes. "Then don't let me breathe." It was all Nathan needed to hear. They joined in a fluid movement, and Claire cried out not in pain, but in pure relief, as if a part of her that had been missing had finally returned to its place. As if she were whole for the first time in a year, Nathan buried his face in her neck, breathing heavily against her wet skin. "God, I forgot how perfect you are." They moved together, finding the rhythm that had always been theirs, not rushed, but intense. Every movement was a conversation, every touch a confession, every moan a promise. The water kept falling, but neither of them noticed anymore. They were lost in each other, in memories and in the present, in what was and what could be again. "I love you," Nathan whispered against her lips, eyes open, vulnerable. "I always have. I always will." Claire felt tears return, but this time they weren't from pain. "I love you too. God help me, but I love you." And there, under the hot water, against the cold wall, two broken hearts began to join together again, not perfectly, not without scars, but together. The world had been reduced to sensations, wet skin against skin, breaths intertwined, heartbeats synchronized. Nathan held Claire as if she were the air he needed to live, as if letting her go meant disappearing. And maybe it did. Maybe they only existed completely when they were like this, intertwined, vulnerable, without defenses. When they finally separated, it was with reluctance. Nathan lowered her slowly, hands sliding down her thighs, her waist, leaving a trail of heat at every point of contact. Claire's feet touched the shower floor, but her legs trembled so much she needed to lean on him. "I've got you," Nathan whispered, holding her firmly against his chest. They stayed like that for an indeterminate time, just embracing under the water that was beginning to cool. Nathan's fingers traced lazy patterns on her back, soft circles, imaginary lines, a form of wordless communication that said, "I'm here, you're safe, I won't let you fall." Claire rested her cheek on his chest, listening to the steady heartbeat, strong, rhythmic, alive. That sound had always calmed her, In the first months of marriage, she used to fall asleep listening to that sound, her head on his chest, feeling protected from the entire world. "I need to dry you off," Nathan murmured against the top of her head. "The water's getting cold." He turned off the shower, and the sudden silence was almost deafening. Only the sound of dripping water and heavy breathing filled the small space. Nathan opened the shower door, reached for a large soft towel from the rack, and wrapped it around Claire with a tenderness that made her want to cry. He dried her arms first, then her shoulders, her neck moving with reverent delicacy, as if he were caring for something precious and fragile. Each touch was intentional, loaded with meaning. It wasn't just about drying off the water. It was about reclaiming the right to care for her, to be present in intimate moments, to be the person she allowed to see her vulnerable. "Lift your arms," he asked gently. Claire obeyed, and Nathan dried her torso, her belly, moving down her legs with slow, careful movements. When he reached her feet, he knelt, drying each toe with absurd attention. From that position, kneeling before her, Nathan looked up. And what Claire saw there completely undid her pure adoration. He looked at her as if she were the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen, as if he were before something sacred. "You're so beautiful," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "Not just now, always. When you wake up with messy hair, when you're tired, when you laugh so hard your eyes disappear. You're everything." Claire reached out, her fingers sliding across his wet face. She traced the line of his jaw, the shape of his lips, the curve of his eyebrows, memorizing, rediscovering. "How did we get here?" she whispered, more to herself than to him. "I don't know, but I'm glad we did." Nathan stood up, grabbed another towel, and began drying himself quickly, practical movements without the same reverence he'd used with her. Claire took the towel from his hand. "My turn." She dried him with the same attention he'd shown, running over the width of his shoulders, his defined chest, his sculpted abdomen. Her hands trembled slightly, not from cold, but from emotion. Every scar she found was an untold story, a piece of his life she had missed. When she reached the scar on his shoulder, the one from the motorcycle accident, Claire leaned in and kissed it. A soft kiss, almost an apology for not having been there. "Nathan, shh, let me take care of you now." She finished drying him in silence, a ritual of tenderness and reconnection. When she was done, she took his hand and guided him out of the bathroom, across the hallway toward the bedroom. The bedroom was wrapped in soft shadows, only moonlight entering through the window, painting everything in tones of silver and blue. The bed was messy, wrinkled sheets, pillows tossed aside, evidence of sleepless nights, of a woman alone fighting against memories. Claire stopped beside the bed, still wrapped only in the towel. Nathan was behind her, so close she could feel the heat of his body radiating against her back. "Are you sure?" he asked for the second time that night, always giving her the option to pull back. In response, Claire let the towel fall to the floor. She stood there naked under the moonlight with nothing to hide. Not her body, not her emotional scars, not the raw vulnerability of standing before the man who had shattered her and whom she still loved desperately. Nathan walked around, positioning himself in front of her. His hands rose slowly, tracing her arms, her shoulders, moving up to her neck. With infinite delicacy, he took a wet strand of hair falling over her face and tucked it behind her ear. The gesture was so simple, so mundane, but loaded with so much intimacy that Claire felt her eyes burn. "You have a stubborn strand here," he said softly, his fingers still playing with her hair. "You always have. It never stays in place. You remember that?" "I remember everything. The way you scrunch your nose when you're concentrating, how you sing in the shower when you think no one's listening, the way you sleep curled up in fetal position, always stealing the blankets." Each detail mentioned was proof that he paid attention, that she mattered, that the years together weren't just time passed, but memories etched in his soul. "And you?" Claire asked, her fingers tracing his chest. "Do you still grind your teeth when you're nervous? Still drink black coffee without sugar because you think sweet coffee isn't real coffee? Still watch basketball game reruns when you already know the outcome?" Nathan laughed, a low, genuine sound that reverberated through his chest. "Guilty on all charges. We know each other so well," Claire said with a mix of sadness and wonder. "How did we lose each other like this? I don't know, but I'm here now. And I'm not letting you go again, not without fighting with everything I have." He moved closer, his face inches from hers. His fingers slid down her arm in a caress so soft it was almost a ghost of a touch. But Claire felt it in every nerve ending. Goosebumps rose on her skin, not from cold, but from the pure awareness of every point where he touched her. "Your touch," she whispered, closing her eyes. It still completely disarms me. Good. Nathan murmured against her lips. Because yours destroy me. He kissed her not with the desperate urgency of the shower, but with devastating tenderness, a kiss that said, I choose you today, tomorrow, always. A kiss that asked forgiveness and offered promises in equal parts. His hand slid behind her, tracing her spine down to the curve of her waist and up again. Each touch was a question. Here, do you still like it this way? And Claire's body responded with sighs, shivers, involuntary gasps. He guided her gently toward the bed, never breaking the kiss. When her legs touched the edge of the mattress, he laid her down carefully, not as if she were fragile, but as if she were precious. Nathan lay beside her, propped on one elbow, just looking. His eyes traveled over every inch of her, not with raw lust, but with appreciation, with love, with the hunger of someone who's been starving for too long. What? Claire asked, self-conscious under the scrutiny, just trying to burn this into my memory. Every detail. Because if this is a dream, I want to remember when I wake up. It's not a dream, she assured him, taking his hand and placing it over her heart, where he could feel the strong, real beat. I'm here. It's real. Nathan leaned in, kissing the place where his hand rested directly over her heart. Then her neck, her shoulder, her collarbone. Each kiss was a renewed promise, a plea for forgiveness, a declaration of love. Claire arched toward him, her hands exploring his muscular back, his broad shoulders, his strong arms. She traced the scars, the old one on his knee from ligament surgery, the small one on his forearm from when he fell off his bike at 12. The new one on his shoulder from the accident. You carry marks I don't know, she said sadly. And you have some I haven't seen, he replied, his fingers tracing a subtle mark on her belly, the C-section scar. You brought our son into the world alone, and I wasn't there. His voice broke at the end, and Claire saw tears glistening in his eyes. You're here now, she whispered. That's what matters. I promise you, Nathan said with fierce intensity, that I will never let you go through something alone again. Never. Whatever it is, we'll face it together. Together, Claire repeated, testing the word. It sounded good. It sounded right. Nathan pulled her closer until there was no space between them. They fit perfectly. They always had like puzzle pieces designed for a single configuration. Stay, Claire whispered against his chest. Tonight, stay with me. There's no place in the world I'd rather be. They lay intertwined under the moonlight, hearts beating in sync, breathing gradually, calming. Nathan's hands never stopped moving, small, comforting caresses, constant reminders that he was there, present, real, and for the first time in nearly a year, Claire felt something she was sure she'd never feel again. Peace. The moon continued its silent journey across the sky, casting silver shadows that danced along the bedroom walls. The silence of the Chicago night was broken only by distant sounds, a passing car, wind whispering between buildings, the beating of two hearts finally finding the same rhythm again. Nathan couldn't stop touching her. It was as if every cell in his body needed constant confirmation that she was there, real and tangible. His fingers traced invisible patterns on her skin, moving up her arm, down the curve of her waist, circling her shoulder. Each touch was a silent prayer of gratitude. Claire turned to face him, her eyes shining in the dimness. There was something different now. The anger had dissolved, leaving only the raw truth of what they felt. She reached out, her fingers sliding along his jaw, feeling the roughness of stubble against her palm. I missed you so much, she confessed, her voice barely more than a whisper. Even when I hated you, I missed you. Every single night, Nathan captured her hand, bringing it to his lips and kissing her palm. Then each finger, one by one. Nights were the worst. I'd wake up reaching for you and find only emptiness, cold. Like half of me had been ripped away. He rolled over, positioning himself above her, elbows propped on either side of her head so as not to put his full weight on her. He stayed there just looking, memorizing how the moonlight painted her face in shades of silver, how her eyes sparkled, how her lips were slightly parted. You're so beautiful it hurts, he whispered, his voice rough. Claire raised her hands, caressing his broad shoulders, moving down his muscular arms, feeling the contained strength there, strength he would never use to hurt her, only to protect her, support her. Show me, she asked, raw vulnerability in her voice. Show me this is real, that I won't wake up alone again. Nathan held her face with both hands, thumbs caressing her cheekbones. You'll never be alone again. Mi promise. And then he kissed her deeply, completely as if trying to transfer his entire soul into that kiss. His tongue explored her mouth, dancing, teasing, claiming. Claire responded with equal intensity, her hands rising to thread through his hair, pulling him closer, deeper. The kiss deepened, becoming more urgent, more necessary. Nathan's hands moved down her neck, tracing the line of her collarbone, descending to capture a breast. His thumb circled her nipple, teasing until it hardened under his touch. Claire arched her back, a moan escaping her lips when Nathan's mouth replaced his hand. His tongue circled, sucked, nibbled, gently sending waves of pleasure straight to her core. Nathan. His name came out as a plea, a request, a need. He raised his head, his dark eyes meeting hers. "Tell me what you want, love. I need to hear you say it. You. Only you. Always you." It was all he needed. Nathan continued the trail of kisses down the valley between her breasts, over her trembling abdomen, stopping to kiss the C-section scar with reverence, as if honoring the sacrifice she'd made, bringing their son into the world. "You're a warrior," he murmured against her skin. "Strong, beautiful, perfect." When his mouth continued descending, Claire held her breath, her entire body tensing in anticipation. Nathan looked up, seeking permission, and when she nodded, he dove in. The first touch of his tongue drew a cry from Claire, her back arched off the bed, hands flying to his hair, holding him there as pure pleasure exploded through her body. In waves, Nathan devoured her like a starving man, licking, sucking, teasing with a skill born of years of intimate knowledge. He knew exactly where to touch, how much pressure to apply, when to speed up, and when to slow down. He knew her body better than she did herself. "I can't. I won't be able to," Claire gasped, her body trembling uncontrollably. "Then don't hold back," Nathan murmured against her. "Let me feel you. Let me take you there." And she went exploding into a million pieces, screaming his name, her body convulsing with pleasure so intense it was almost pain. Nathan held her through it all, his tongue never stopping, prolonging the ecstasy until she pushed him away, hypersensitive. He climbed slowly, kissing every inch of the way back, belly, breasts, neck, finally capturing her lips in a deep kiss. Claire could taste herself on him, and something about that raw intimacy made her moan. "Your turn," she whispered against his lips, her hands pushing against his shoulders until he rolled onto his back. Claire positioned herself over him, hair falling like a curtain around their faces. Her hands explored freely, now tracing his defined chest, the abdominal muscles that contracted under her touch, moving down to wrap around his hardness. Nathan groaned loudly, his hips rising involuntarily, seeking more contact. "Claire, love." She stroked him slowly, watching how his face contorted in pleasure, how his jaw tightened, how his eyes closed as he fought for control. "Look at me," she ordered softly. Nathan opened his eyes, dark, dilated, burning with desire so intense it was almost tangible. "I want to see you," Claire continued. "I want to see what I do to you." She positioned herself over him, her entrance grazing against his tip, teasing them both until neither could breathe properly. "Please," Nathan begged, his hands gripping her hips. "I need you now." Claire descended slowly, inch by inch, until he was completely buried inside her. They both moaned at the same time, the sound mixing, harmonizing, becoming one. For a moment, neither moved. They just stayed there, connected in the most intimate way possible. Eyes fixed on each other. Breath synchronized. "I love you," Nathan said, the words coming out with religious reverence. "God, how I love you." "Show me," Claire responded, beginning to move. They found their rhythm not rushed, but intense. Each movement was intentional, loaded with meaning. It wasn't just sex. It was reconnection. It was forgiveness. It was love manifested in physical form. Nathan held her hips, guiding the rhythm but letting her stay in control. Claire moved over him like water fluid, graceful, mesmerizing. Her breasts swayed with each movement. "You're so beautiful like this," he groaned. "Perfect. Mine. Yours," she agreed, increasing the pace. "I always was." Claire's hands braced on his chest to maintain balance as she moved faster, deeper. She could feel the tension building again, that delicious pressure coiling tighter and tighter at her center. Nathan felt the change in her. He slid a hand between their bodies, his thumb finding the sensitive spot and circling with perfect pressure. "Come with me," he asked, his voice strained. "I want to feel you." The touch was enough. Claire exploded, screaming his name, her entire body convulsing. The sensation of her tightening around him took Nathan along. He rose from the bed, arms wrapping around her completely as he found his own release. Groaning against her neck, they fell together, a tangle of limbs and gasping breaths. Both their hearts beat so hard they could feel it through their skin. Claire collapsed onto his chest, exhausted, satisfied, complete. Nathan held her tightly, one hand tracing lazy patterns on her back, the other buried in her hair. "Don't let me go," she whispered against his sweaty skin. "Never," he promised, kissing the top of her head. "Never again." They stayed like that for an indeterminate time, just holding each other, catching their breath, letting the reality of what had just happened settle in. There was no regret, no doubt, just quiet certainty that no matter how difficult the road ahead might be, they would walk it together. Eventually, Claire rolled to the side but remained curled against him, her head on his chest, her leg intertwined with his. Nathan pulled the blanket over them, creating a cocoon of warmth and safety. "What do we do now?" Claire asked quietly. "Now," Nathan responded, kissing her forehead. "We sleep, and tomorrow we start again. Together, together," she repeated, the words sounding like a promise, and there, intertwined under the moonlight, two shattered hearts began the slow process of healing, not erasing the scars, but learning to carry them together. Dawn arrived silently, painting the Chicago sky in soft shades of pink and gold. The first lights of day filtered through the curtains, creating warm stripes that danced over the wrinkled white sheets. The apartment was at peace, that kind of sacred quiet that only exists in the early morning hours, when the world still sleeps and possibilities seem infinite. Claire woke slowly, emerging from the deepest, most restorative sleep she'd had in months. There was warmth beside her, not the lonely warmth of piled blankets, but the living, pulsing warmth of another body. For a moment, before fully opening her eyes, she allowed herself just to feel the weight of an arm over her waist, the soft breathing against her nape, and the masculine scent of leather, and something indefinable that was just him, Nathan. The memory of the previous night flooded her mind in waves. The shower, the touches, the confessions, the complete surrender. Claire opened her eyes, turning carefully so as not to wake him, and there he was, asleep beside her, his face relaxed in a way she rarely saw when he was awake. In sleep, all defenses fell away, his jaw relaxed, lips slightly parted, the worry lines around his eyes softened. He looked younger like this, almost vulnerable, and something in Claire's chest tightened painfully. She couldn't resist. She reached out, her fingers gently tracing the line of his jaw, feeling the roughness of grown stubble, the familiar texture of skin she knew so well. There was a red mark on his neck, a sign left by her the previous night in the heat of passion, and Claire felt a blush rise to her face as she remembered. Her fingers continued exploring, tracing his thick eyebrow, down his straight nose, outlining the lips that had kissed every inch of her a few hours ago. It was as if she needed to convince herself he was real, that he wasn't just another of the cruel dreams that tormented her every night. Nathan stirred slightly under her touch, a small smile curving his lips before he even opened his eyes. "Keep going," he murmured in a voice rough with sleep. "Don't stop," Claire smiled, continuing the gentle caress. "How long have you been awake?" "Long enough to be pretending to sleep, just so you'd keep touching me." He opened his eyes then, those brown eyes that had always had the power to see through all her defenses. But there was nothing predatory in his gaze now, just tenderness, just love. "Good morning," he whispered, his voice loaded with emotion. "Good morning," Claire replied, feeling inexplicable tears burning in her eyes. Nathan noticed immediately, his face filled with concern, his hand rising to wipe away a tear that escaped. "Hey, what's wrong? Do you regret it?" "No," she answered quickly, taking his hand and holding it against her face. "It's not that, it's just, you're here. Really here. And I woke up and you hadn't left. And this is so different from all the dreams I've had this whole year where you were here but then I'd wake up and I was alone again." Nathan pulled her to him, silencing the flow of words with a soft kiss. "I'm here," he said against her lips. "It wasn't a dream, and I'm not leaving. Never again unless you send me away. And even then I'll fight." Claire buried her face in his chest, breathing deeply. His scent enveloped her, familiar and comforting, like coming home after a long journey. "I'm so afraid," she confessed in a whisper. "Of what?" "That this is too good to be true. That something will go wrong. That I'll lose you again." Nathan held her tighter, his hand tracing comforting circles on her back. "Look at me," he asked gently. Claire raised her head, meeting his eyes. "I'm not going to lie and say it'll be easy. We have a lot to rebuild. Trust, communication, everything. But I'm here, and I'm committed completely. You and Leo are everything to me. Everything. And I'm going to spend every day of the rest of my life proving that to you." There was so much sincerity in his gaze, so much determination that Claire felt something inside her quiet down. The fear didn't disappear completely, maybe it never would, but it became smaller, more manageable. "One day at a time," she suggested. "One day at a time," Nathan agreed, sealing the promise with a kiss on her forehead. They stayed embraced in comfortable silence, just enjoying the feeling of being together. Nathan's fingers continued those lazy movements on her back, up, down. Gentle circles that had no purpose other than to touch, to maintain contact. "I miss this," Claire murmured against his chest. "What?" "This silence with you." Silence was never uncomfortable. It was always full, like we were saying everything without needing words. Nathan kissed the top of her head. "I know exactly what you mean." The light kept changing pink, giving way to gold, gold transforming into bright white. The day was beginning outside, but inside the bedroom, time seemed suspended, as if the universe were giving them a few stolen moments before reality returned. "What time is it?" Claire asked lazily. Nathan stretched his arm to grab his phone from the nightstand, blinking against the screen's light. "6:15. Leo will wake up soon." "I know." Neither of them moved. "Not yet. Just a few more minutes in that perfect bubble before we need to face the outside world, before we need to explain to others and to ourselves what exactly is happening between us." "Thank you," Claire said suddenly. He pulled back just enough to look at her face, confusion evident. "For what?" "For not giving up. For coming here. For fighting even when I made it so hard." His eyes filled with tears. He didn't try to hide them. "You never need to thank me for loving you. It's the easiest thing I've ever done." Claire reached for his face, wiping away a tear that escaped. "We're going to be okay, aren't we?" "We are," Nathan promised with conviction. "It might not be perfect, and there will be hard days, but in the end we'll be okay. Because we have something many people spend their whole lives looking for and never find." "What?" "True love. The kind that survives distance, fights, misunderstandings. The kind that refuses to die, no matter how much we try to kill it." Claire smiled through her tears. "Did you become a poet?" Nathan laughed, that rich, warm sound she loved. "No, I just became honest. Spending a year without you taught me a lot about what really matters." They kissed slow, soft, without urgency, just two human beings affirming the choice to be together, to try again, to believe that love can be stronger than pain. When they separated, Claire nestled her head back on his chest, allowing herself just a few more moments of peace before the day truly began. "Listen," Nathan said suddenly. Claire stayed quiet, attentive, and then she heard its small sounds coming from the baby monitor. Leo was waking up. "Time to be parents," she said with a sigh mixed with reluctance and joy. "Time to be a family," Nathan corrected, kissing her forehead one last time before getting up. He picked up his clothes from the floor, the jeans still damp from last night's shower, the wrinkled shirt. He dressed quickly, but his eyes never left Claire, who was also getting up, wrapping herself in a soft robe. "Should we go together?" he asked, extending his hand. Claire looked at the extended hand, strong, calloused, offering support and partnership. She took it without hesitation. "Together," she agreed, and hand in hand, they walked down the hallway toward Leo's room. The apartment was bathed in the golden morning light, transforming everything into something new and full of promise. The sound of the baby grew louder with each step, calling for them, needing them. Nathan stopped at the bedroom door, turning to Claire one last time. "Ready for this?" She squeezed his hand. "With you?" "Yes." And together they entered the room where their son waited for them, taking the first step toward becoming a family again. Not perfect, not without scars, but real and together and full of love. Leo was standing in his crib, little hands gripping the rails, brown curls tousled from sleep. When he saw them both entering together, his little face lit up with a smile, so pure and genuine, it made both their hearts squeeze. "Mommy, Daddy," the joy in his voice was unmistakable. There was no confusion, no questioning, just the simple and unconditional acceptance of a child who saw his parents together and knew instinctively that this was right. Nathan approached first, his eyes glistening as he leaned down to pick up the boy. Leo threw himself into his arms without hesitation, little arms wrapping around his father's neck as if he never wanted to let go. "Good morning, champ," Nathan whispered, his voice choked. "Did you sleep well?" "I did. I dreamed about dinosaurs," Leo responded enthusiastically, then turned toward Claire. "Mommy too?" Claire approached, kissing her son's round cheek. "Me too, sweetheart." Leo looked between them and then, with the simple logic of a 2-year-old, asked Daddy staying? The question hung in the air, innocent, but loaded with meaning. Nathan looked at Claire over Leo's head. The question was evident in his eyes too. It was her decision. It always would be. Claire took a deep breath, looking at her son in his father's arms, seeing how they fit together perfectly, how Leo felt safe and loved there. She looked at Nathan, at the man who had shattered her and whom she still loved, the man who was here, asking for a chance, offering everything. Yes, she said softly but firmly, Daddy's staying. The smile that lit up Nathan's face was like sunrise, slow, radiant, transformative. Leo clapped his hands, laughing with that contagious joy of children. Yay, Daddy's staying. Let's play. Nathan laughed, tears finally flowing freely down his face. He didn't try to hide them. There was no shame in those tears, just relief, gratitude, overflowing love. We will, champ. We'll play a lot. Claire moved closer, and Nathan wrapped his free arm around her, creating a circle, mother, father, and son together. Leo, in the middle, looked up with wide eyes, as if he sensed the importance of that moment even without fully understanding it. Family, the boy said, testing the word with that imperfect and adorable pronunciation. Yes, sweetheart, Claire confirmed, her voice trembling. Family. They stayed like that for a moment, a living portrait of second chances and new beginnings. It wasn't perfect. There were scratches, scars, wounds that would still need time to heal completely. But it was real. It was theirs. Breakfast, Nathan suggested, breaking the emotional moment with practicality. Pancakes, Leo shouted immediately. Claire laughed, a light, genuine sound that Nathan realized he hadn't heard in a long time. Pancakes it is. But you, she pointed at Nathan, are going to help. No, just watching. Yes, ma'am, he replied with a playful smile, following her to the kitchen with Leo still in his arms. The kitchen was bathed in golden morning light. Claire began separating ingredients while Nathan sat Leo in the high chair, making sure the boy was secure. The apartment filled with domestic sounds, the clinking of bowls, the rustling of packages, Leo's laughter as Nathan made silly faces at him. Do you remember how to make them? Claire asked, handing Nathan a bowl and a whisk. I think I can manage. I haven't forgotten everything. They worked side by side, movements synchronized in a way that only comes with years of practice. Nathan cracked eggs while Claire measured flour. She added milk while he stirred. It was a familiar dance, comforting, like wearing an old favorite piece of clothing that fits perfectly. Remember when we tried to make pancakes that first time? Nathan said suddenly, a nostalgic smile on his face. In our first apartment, Claire laughed, the memory coming back vividly. You put in so much baking powder, they turned out like sponges. And then you insisted you were experimenting with textures. Hey, it was culinary avant-garde. It was a disaster. Yes, it was, he admitted, laughing. But you ate them anyway, said they were the bravest pancakes you'd ever tasted, because they were made with love. Bad pancakes made with love are still better than perfect pancakes made without it. Their eyes met, and the smile slowly faded, replaced by something deeper. There was so much unsaid in that exchange, shared memories, common history, a solid foundation on which they could rebuild. Daddy, Mommy, pancake, Leo shouted, breaking the moment. Coming, Claire replied, turning to the heated pan. She poured the batter, creating perfect circles that began to bubble and brown. The smell of vanilla and butter filled the kitchen, creating an atmosphere of comfort and home. Nathan set the table, plates, silverware, napkins, even a small vase with flowers he found on the counter. Claire watched from the corner of her eye, touched by the attention to detail, by the effort he was making. When everything was ready, they sat at the table, Claire on one side, Nathan on the other, Leo in the high chair between them. Sunlight streamed through the window, creating a golden halo around the scene. I'll pray, Leo announced, putting his little hands together as Claire had taught him. Nathan looked at Claire, surprised and touched. She just smiled, encouraging the boy. Thank you, God, for the food. Thank you for Mommy. Thank you for Daddy. Thank you for family. Amen, Nathan and Claire repeated together. Voices choked. The meal was noisy and messy. Leo managed to spread maple syrup all over the high chair. Nathan had to clean syrup from his own hair after the boy decided to feed Daddy, and Claire laughed so hard she had to hold on to the table. It was chaotic. It was imperfect. It was absolutely perfect. After breakfast, while Claire bathed Leo, who protested dramatically about having his hair washed, Nathan cleaned the kitchen. He washed each dish carefully, put everything back in the right place, wiped the counter until it shone, not because he had to, but because he wanted to. He wanted to prove he was there not just for the good moments, but also for the mundane, the practical, the real ones. When Claire returned with Leo clean and sweet-smelling, dressed in a dinosaur outfit that was clearly his favorite, she stopped at the kitchen entrance, watching Nathan dry the last dish. "You didn't have to." "I know," he interrupted gently, "but I wanted to." Leo ran to his father, pulling his hand. "Daddy, play." "What do you want to play, champ?" "Blocks. Make giant tower." Nathan let himself be dragged to the living room, sitting on the rug while Leo dumped all the colorful blocks on the floor. Claire watched them from the couch, her heart so full it seemed about to overflow. She grabbed her phone, unable to resist, and took a picture, Nathan and Leo, heads together, focused on building the tallest tower possible. The morning light illuminated them perfectly, creating an image Claire knew she'd treasure forever. "Mommy, help," Leo called, reaching out his hand. Claire joined them on the floor, and soon all three were building together, passing blocks, laughing when the tower fell, starting again with renewed determination. "Higher," Leo commanded. "To the ceiling." "I think the ceiling is a bit ambitious." Nathan laughed, but kept stacking blocks. Eventually, the tower got so tall that Leo had to stand on his tiptoes to reach the top. When he placed the last block, a bright red one, and the structure remained standing, he burst into applause. "We did it! Look, Mommy! Daddy, we did it!" "We did," Claire confirmed, kissing the top of his head, "because we worked together." She looked at Nathan when she said it, and the deeper meaning wasn't lost on him. He nodded, understanding. "Together is always better," he agreed. They spent the rest of the morning like that, playing, laughing, existing together as a family. There were no deep conversations about the future, no detailed plans being made, just the present, this moment, this day, these people. When Leo finally succumbed to his morning nap, collapsing on the couch in the middle of a story, Nathan carefully carried him to his crib. Claire followed, adjusting the blanket over the boy, kissing his forehead. They stood there for a moment side by side, watching their son sleep. Nathan put his arm around Claire's waist, pulling her close. She leaned into him, allowing herself that moment of peace. "Thank you," Nathan whispered. "For what?" "For letting me be part of this, for giving me a second chance, for believing we can be a family again." Claire turned in his arms, her hands rising to frame his face. "We were always a family, Nathan. Even when separated, Leo was always your son, and I was always yours. Even when I tried not to be." He kissed her forehead, then her eyelids, her cheeks finally, her lips. A soft, reverent kiss, loaded with promise. "We're going to make it work this time," he promised. "Whatever it takes." "Yes," Claire agreed. "We will." And there, in their son's room, with morning light bathing everything in gold, they sealed the promise not with grand declarations or dramatic gestures, but with something much more powerful. The simple and conscious choice to try again, to fight for love, to be a family. Because in the end, that's what mattered, not perfection, not the absence of mistakes, but the willingness to keep choosing each other day after day, moment after moment. And in that continuous choice was the true strength, the true love. And finally, a real chance at a new beginning. Afternoon fell softly over Chicago, bringing with it that golden melancholic quality that only autumn possesses. The apartment was in comfortable silence. Leo still slept his sleep deep and peaceful, oblivious to the seismic transformations happening around him. Nathan was on the balcony, elbows resting on the railing, watching the city move below. Cars passed, people walked hurriedly. The world kept turning, indifferent to the small miracles happening in quiet apartments where families rebuilt themselves, one choice at a time. Claire came out to the balcony, bringing 2 cups of hot coffee. Steam rose in lazy spirals in the cold air. She handed one to Nathan and stood beside him, shoulders touching lightly, a small contact but significant. "What are you thinking about?" she asked after a moment. Nathan took a sip of coffee, considering the question. When he finally answered, his voice was loaded with contained emotion. "I was thinking about how I almost lost everything, about how I was a coward, about how I almost let fear and pride destroy the only thing that really matters." Claire looked at him, seeing his strong profile against the afternoon light. There was something different about him now, a humility that wasn't there before, an awareness born of loss and near loss. "It wasn't just you," she said softly. "I was a coward too. I could have listened to you. I could have fought. But I chose to run because it was easier to believe in betrayal than to face the possibility of being wrong, of having misjudged you." Nathan turned to face her completely, leaning his hip against the railing. "So we both messed up." Yes, we messed up terribly. A sad smile curved his lips. At least we messed up together. Claire laughed a low, almost surprised sound. There was something liberating in that mutual recognition. Neither was villain or victim. Both were just human, imperfect, scared, trying to navigate turbulent emotional waters without a map or compass. "What do we do now?" she asked, echoing the same question from the night before, but with a different weight. Now, in the light of day, with reality setting in, the question carried practical implications. Nathan placed his coffee cup on the railing and took her hands in his calloused, warm, firm. "Honestly, I don't know. I don't have all the answers. I don't have a perfect 5-step plan to rebuild our life together." He paused, his thumbs tracing circles on the backs of her hands. "But I know what I won't do. I won't make you cheap promises. I won't swear we'll never fight again, because we will. I won't promise everything will be easy, because it won't be. I won't say I'll never disappoint you again, because I'm human, and eventually I'll make mistakes." Claire felt tears stinging her eyes, but she let him continue. "What I can promise," Nathan went on, his voice firm with conviction, "is that I'll show up every day, even on the hard days, especially on the hard days. I can promise I'll listen to you even when I don't like what you're saying. I can promise I'll fight for us, not against you, but beside you against anything that tries to separate us." He raised one of her hands, kissing each finger one by one. "I can promise I'll be honest. Even when the truth is uncomfortable, I can promise I'll prioritize you and Leo above everything: work, pride, fear. And I can promise I'll love you not in the romantic, superficial way of movies, but in the real way, the way that involves choosing you every day, even when I'm not feeling butterflies in my stomach. The way that means washing dishes at 3 in the morning when Leo is sick. The way that means holding your hair when you're nauseous. The way that means staying when it's hard, when it's boring, when it's mundane." Tears now flowed freely down Claire's face. "Nathan, I'm not finished," he said gently. "I can promise that when I mess up, and I will, I'll admit it. I'll apologize. I'll do better. And I can promise that never, never again will I let pride stop me from fighting for you." He held her face with both hands, forcing her to look into his eyes, those honest, vulnerable, completely open brown eyes. "These are the only promises I can make. They're not romantic. They're not perfect, but they're real. And they're yours if you want them." Claire sobbed, throwing her arms around his neck. "I want them. All of them, and I give you the same promises back." They held each other there on the balcony as the afternoon slowly transformed into twilight. The city below continued its chaotic dance, but up there, in that small space, there was peace. "We have so much to rebuild," Claire said against his chest. "I know, but not alone this time. Together, together," she repeated, the word becoming a kind of mantra. They went back inside when the air got too cold. Leo still slept, his face angelic in the soft light of the room. Nathan and Claire stood in the doorway watching, hands intertwined. "He deserves parents who fight to stay together," Nathan said quietly. "He deserves parents who are honest about their imperfections, but who love each other despite them." Claire corrected. "He deserves us the way we are trying." "Yes." They moved to the living room couch, sitting close but not completely intertwined, finding the balance between intimacy and individual space. Claire picked up her phone, scrolling absent-mindedly, but stopped at an old photo from their wedding. The two of them laughing, covered in rice, perfectly happy and completely oblivious to the challenges that would come. "We were so young," she said, showing Nathan the photo. We thought love was enough. And isn't it?" Nathan considered the question carefully. "Love is necessary, but it's not enough. It also needs work, communication, active commitment, forgiveness, grace. When did you get so wise?" He laughed without humor. "After losing you, nothing makes you grow faster than losing the most important thing in your life, and realizing it was your own fault." Claire rested her head on his shoulder, and Nathan put his arm around her, pulling her closer. "Sometimes," Claire said thoughtfully, "you have to lose something to understand the value of what you had." Best quote I've heard in a long time. I just made it up. "So you're a poet now?" Claire smiled. "I just became honest about what I feel, about what I want, about how much you still mean to me even when I tried to convince myself otherwise." They stayed like that until Leo woke up, calling for them with that sleepy, cute voice. When they entered the room, the boy stretched his little arms, wanting to be held by both at the same time. Nathan picked him up but held Claire's hand, creating that 3-point connection: mother, father, son, a complete triangle. "Dinner," Claire suggested. "Let me cook," Nathan offered. "You two rest." Do you know how to cook anything besides burnt omelets? Hey, I learned some things this year. I had to survive without you feeding me. Remember? In the kitchen, Nathan really had improved. He prepared a simple but tasty pasta with fresh tomato sauce and basil. Claire watched from the doorway, touched by the effort, by the attention to detail. They ate at the small kitchen table, homey, simple, real. Leo ate more sauce than pasta but was happy. Nathan told silly stories that made the boy laugh. Claire smiled, feeling something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Not the naive hope of fairy tales, but the realistic hope of two adults who know the cost of love, who carry scars, but who choose to try anyway. After dinner, after putting Leo to bed, after cleaning the kitchen side by side, they returned to the couch. The TV was on, but neither was paying attention. They were lost in their own thoughts, processing everything that had happened in the last 24 hours. "Will you stay again tonight?" Claire asked quietly. "If you want me to, I do. Then I'll stay." There was no drama in that exchange, no grand declarations, just simple choices, honest conversations, real people trying to figure out how to love better. Later, lying in bed, Claire nestled against Nathan, her head on his chest, listening to the steady heartbeat. "I don't know what the future holds," she said. "I don't know if we'll make it. I don't know if love is enough to heal everything." Nathan kissed the top of her head. "I don't know either, but I'm willing to find out with you, one day at a time, one day at a time," she echoed. And there, in that apartment in Chicago with a son sleeping in the next room and the weight of a complicated past pressing down on them, two shattered hearts made the most courageous choice possible. The choice to try again, not because there was a guarantee of success, not because it would be easy, not because the wounds had completely healed, but because true love, the real, imperfect, scarred kind, doesn't need cheap promises or perfect endings. It just needs two people willing to show up day after day, choosing each other through storms and calm, through doubts and certainty, through pain and healing. And in that continuous choice was the true strength, the true love, and finally a real chance at a new beginning. Claire and Nathan learned the hard way that true love isn't built on perfect promises, but on imperfect choices made every day. They discovered that sometimes you have to lose everything to understand the value of what you had. And that courage isn't about never falling, but about getting up together, scar by scar, choice by choice. Forgiveness didn't erase the past, but it made room for a future where both could be human, flawed, and still deeply loved. And perhaps that's the most beautiful lesson, that love doesn't make us perfect, but it gives us the strength to keep trying together, one day at a time.